Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Forechecking TV. I'm your host, Doug Glackey. Alongside me are my co-hosts, Scotty Porterfield and Trevin TK Catellis. And tonight we are joined by a very special guest, sports YouTuber and pretty much esteemed shit poster, if you will, UrinatingTree. Tree, how you doing, man?
I'm doing all right, guys. How you guys doing today?
Good. We're doing pretty good. You know,
Nice.
Everything's going pretty good in Pittsburgh right now, with the exception of Sidney Crosby getting wrist surgery and the Steelers refusing to commit guaranteed money to TJ Watt for some reason.
Well, we're going to ignore all that. It was beautiful outside today after it stopped raining for roughly the 200th time this year. But that's all that matters. It was gorgeous.
Yeah,
I cooked some pork chops on the grill. Everything's good. I'm not going to worry about Sidney Crosby. I'm not going to break down into a ball and cry. And I'm not going to talk about TJ Watt because I'll break down into a ball and cry. Yeah, it's not good. Just pay the man. It's not hard. It's not Le'Veon.
No, it's literally like the player who has given the most of his shit out of any player they've had in recent memory. Like, just do it. But anyway,
that again with like a Le'Veon situation.
Yeah, no, they won't.
If they franchise tag him, it might.
Very true.
That's very true. But moving onward, we're going to basically just lead off with this Sidney Crosby situation. Had a little bit of a news dump on us this evening that Sidney Crosby got wrist surgery, or a wrist procedure done rather, done today, and he's going to be out for the entirety of training camp, and the recovery timetable 6 weeks, which would take us into 2 to 3 weeks into the season. So this is going to be probably the second time in the Crosby Malkin era that the Penguins will be playing without both Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin at the same exact time.
The fortunate thing is our best center right now is a touch better than Mark Letestu was in 2011. So
That's
yeah,
true.
but it's bad. I mean, especially since McCann was used as fodder to try and, get a prospect or two back. And now your forward depth is absolutely thrashed. Like losing Crosby, that's a huge piece. And usually it'd be like, oh, hey, Crosby may be out, but Malkin usually goes on fire and just dominates like he's one of the best players in the world. But he's going to be out for months. So at this point, who's your real game changer? Gensel? Like Gensel hasn't been the same in a couple of years. Rust, he's going to be a free agent, so he might do well, but he's the kind of player that is going to fall off hard because his main asset is speed. Like there's nobody really coming up from like the minor league system. This is the last chance year for the Penguins, because if you think about it, Malkin's going to be a free agent. Letang's going to be a free agent. Brian Rust is going to be a free agent. Jeff Carter's going to be a free agent. So if they don't do well, you might be seeing a lot of longtime faces go and officially start a rebuild per se. They'll go kicking and screaming, but it will be a rebuild.
I don't think necessarily you'll have, even if say you wanted to keep some of those long-term guys, as you were saying in their tree, you're not going to have the money to re-sign them, number one.
No.
So and my question to you guys and throwing it out would be, say you're Pittsburgh, you wanted to re-sign, say, as many of these players as you can. Which ones would you rather look to try to trade with or trade away rather than just let them go willingly? Like, give me your opinions on that.
I feel like with the Penguins, their priorities are going to be signing Malkin and Letang, because Lemieux's biggest regret was trading Yager and not letting him stay. So I feel like he's going to try and keep that core around as long as possible, unless it's like just physically impossible. But I would say the guy you trade would probably be Rust, because he can get good value, especially if you're not doing well at the deadline. You can get a few decent prospects for him, especially as like him can roll, a very versatile player. You can play him on the first line. He'll be good. You can play him on the second or third line. He'll be really good. Great on a penalty kill. He can drive offense, good in the neutral zone, reliable defensively. Those guys are at a premium, especially come deadline time.
Yeah, that's a good point. Go ahead, Scotty.
The question I want to pose now, obviously, because, like you touched on a Tree, we're basically going back to 2011 at this point. Crosby, no Malkin. I mean, your top we could be looking at a potential top 2 centers being 36-year-old Jeff Carter and Teddy Bluger.
Mm-hmm.
We're being honest. So I think the question now is not, is this team still capable of winning a cup? Can this team actually make the playoffs?
It depends how the goaltending does. Like Jari, I mean, they did replace their goaltending coach, but I thought Jari was going to be run out of town. I'm more surprised they've taken like a conservative approach towards that regard. But
A lot of it has to do with Hextall.
Jari had his moments last year, but there were a lot of times where he tried to be Martin Brodeur and it just burned him big time.
Yeah, definitely. I think, when it comes to, I think it was a lot of, like I said before, a lot of it has to do with Hextall. Being he's in that, he has the same mindset, I guess in a sense that that Jari does. But I mean, even before Crosby went down with this injury, this was already going to be an uphill climb for the Penguins.
With no Malkin.
With no Malkin, exactly. Because here's the thing, Jeff Carter, if he was going to fill in on that second line center, he was going to have to play the way he did whenever he came to Pittsburgh. Yeah. And I don't know if he had that performance in him.
He's more of a Matt Cullen type right now. More third line. He can fill in on the top 6 in a pinch, but he doesn't have the kind of skill he had even 5 years ago.
And on top of all that, it's not like the Penguins improved during this offseason either.
Oh, no, they regressed. I mean, you've lost your energy guy in Tanev. You lost Jared McCann, who I thought was a really solid, middle 6 guy. You've lost a couple other players as well. You have some bad contracts on the books, especially Pettersson's contract does not look good right now. You still have Matheson's contract, which, I mean, that's a big boondoggle in itself. Cody Ceci, I mean, I would not have paid him as much as Edmonton paid him, but he was reliable last year as like a third pairing guy, sheltered minutes. But the only person you brought in is Brock McGinn, who's more like a Tanev light. So you mainly bottom 6. They didn't have the cap. So at this point, that's why I'm calling this last chance year. And this might be the first time they don't make the playoffs in 15 years.
Yeah,
it's very reasonable. And I thought this was going to happen maybe a couple years ago, but now it might be time to start paying the piper. And it happens to every team in a cap era.
It really does. Yeah. And like you said, the guys that they brought in, I don't see them really living up to expectations. I mean, like we talked about in past episodes, Heinen, I just don't see him having the type of impact. If they do try and plug him in on that Aston Reese Bluger line,
I mean, I like Dan Heinen, but he's not really like a bottom 6 type. He's more top 6 or bust, I feel like.
Yeah.
Or more like your upside's probably McCann.
Yeah.
So hopefully he's back to his rookie form, but I don't know.
That's one big if.
Yeah, that's the big thing. Yeah, exactly. There's a whole lot of ifs. Obviously, like we said, biggest if is goaltending, but I really like the goalie coach hire. I think that he might be able to get Jari right. I always found Mike Buckley to be suspect in terms of how the goalies went downhill. I mean,
Murray too.
One could make the argument that he's a big part of the reason that Matt Murray hasn't been the same.
Yeah, my biggest complaint of like the cup era, it was not JR running the team into the ground, even though that was a huge reason. The big thing was firing Mike Bales after a cup win. Yeah. And then replacing him with Buckley, because Bales was the guy who really helped Fleury rebound a decent bit. He helped Murray become elite. He helped a couple other goalies, if I remember correctly. Zakhoff played like a really well game 1 against the Rangers. That doesn't happen, I don't think, with Buckley. So
yeah. I mean, even you think about like before that Mr. Game 1 appearance with Jeff Zakhoff, a couple years prior, he's playing like hell down the stretch. Like he looked incredible at times. And, a lot of that was probably due to the tutelage of Mike Bales. And, I mean, like literally, I understood it at the time because Mike Buckley was Matt Murray's guy and Matt Murray was going to be the goalie of the future, but obviously it blew up in their face. And now we're talking about a year where they may not even make the playoffs. But, convenience sake, not a bad year to miss playoffs. Especially
deep draft, and we haven't had many
deep.
picks. unless they think they can still win and they trade a first round pick for, I don't know, Tarasenko or something like that, which would be foolish, but
I could see a first round pick for Tomas Hertl.
Tomas
being
Hertl. Well, Tomas
at the
Hertl's
deadline.
really good though.
Yeah,
I
he's a
like
great
Tomas
player.
Hertl.
I love him. Yeah,
But
great guy.
I don't think that's going to help the Penguins get to the playoffs. That's the only thing.
That's true. It might kick the can deeper down the road of the
Yeah.
impending doom that we're about to go through within the next 4 to 5 years. But with that, other than that, it's really not much. But moving on, we're gonna talk about basically the main reason we have Tree here, and that was the Carolina Hurricanes pulling off one of the biggest trolls of all time by offer sheeting Jesperi Kotkaniemi. 1 year, $6.15 million offer sheet. Montreal did not match it, and he's now going to Carolina, where apparently he's going to be used as a left winger and not a center. So
that is strange to me. I figured like Kotkaniemi would be best as a center. You saw flashes of that brilliance in Montreal's playoff run. You can argue that Montreal wouldn't have gone far if they kept Cole Caulfield and Kotkaniemi on the bench. So I feel like moving him to a wing is going to limit his strengths. It is a punitive move. We all know this. This is revenge for trying to offer sheet Aho. And nobody's paying $6.15 million for Kotkaniemi right now. He could be worth $6.15 million, but right now, no. And if I'm Montreal, you have to sit there and think, would you accept a first and a third round pick? The first rounder is unprotected for Kotkaniemi right now. And for me, that answer would be yes.
Yeah. You think like that? Sorry, Doug, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say, Tree, like you mentioned that, playing him on a wing instead of the center. Obviously, when you're looking at Montreal, the way they played him up there, like you said, they probably wouldn't have made that playoff run if they didn't play him where they did.
No.
Now going over to Carolina, there's a lot more other talent over than Carolina. You had a little bit younger team up there in Montreal. You got a little bit of veterancy here on Carolina. Even though Aho is still young, he's been in the league a couple years here. He has some experience under his belt. Do you think like maybe playing him on that wing is just a way for Carolina to maybe stack up a couple of those other lines and make them like super powerful in a way?
Maybe, but Carolina has had a very weird offseason. They wouldn't pay Alex Nedeljkovic like $3 million. They trade him for next to nothing, even though he's a Calder-nominated goalie. And even if you think he's a one-year wonder, that is a very foolish decision. And then you bring in two incredibly injury-prone goaltenders in Freddie Anderson and Antti Raanta. And I like Antti Raanta, but the problem is he can't stay healthy. So I mean, I don't know. You trade Jake Bean, who could have been something. Dougie Hamilton's gone. You bring in Anthony DeAngelo, who's, well, let's say he's known for having great relations with his goalies. But and now you have this, and I know they're looking to extend him probably cheaper, like $4 million. But at the same time, the one thing I didn't think Carolina should have done is panic, and I feel like they're kind of panicking. They're kind of like overhauling stuff they don't need to overhaul just because they're being scared by a boogeyman in Tampa Bay, even though their window is just opening, which doesn't make sense to me.
They do have a big future ahead of them. And I know, as Doug had said, when you were talking about some of those players they could have, they had to let go and whatnot. Doug and myself and Scott have talked about this a bunch that, I think a smarter move would have been to invest more money in signing Dougie Hamilton rather than Brady Shea.
Dougie Hamilton, unfortunately, he was going to go because he was going to get premium on the market. And you can't predict that, well, Brady Shea, I mean, Rangers fans hate his guts, but at the same time, you have to pick and choose. And Dougie Hamilton, you probably wouldn't have just given up Shea. You'd probably be giving up someone else as well. So you'd probably be trading Niederreiter as well. So.
Yeah, Carolina just had like you said, a weird offseason. Their one good move was acquiring Ethan Bear, but it came at the expense of Warren Fogle. So I mean,
and that's forward depth.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if like Kotkaniemi is going to replace Fogle on that line, which they're two completely different skill sets. Fogle's is more of a like bottom sixer. I feel like more of the like heart, spirit, agitation, poor hands. Decent wheels, good penalty killer. Kotkaniemi, I feel like, has more high-end skill, but he's not really, I would call a grittier penalty killer, which I feel like it's a miscast placement for Kotkaniemi.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Tree. I think a big part of what Carolina might do, they might do the Finnish first line of Kotkaniemi, Aho, and Teravainen,
Yeah, that
and then
makes sense.
they'll just bump Svech down with Trocheck and Lucic. I think that's a really, really good.
That's a
second line on
loaded
paper.
top six.
Yeah, loaded top six on paper. And I think Nino Niederreiter could coexist with Jordan Stahl and Jesper Fast.
I think so too.
I think it could work. And then, you make your fourth line out of, Jordan Martinook and Derek Stepan and whoever you choose to play on that right wing spot. I mean, I think, obviously long term, I think they'll view Kotkaniemi as a center. But, for right now, I think, you just keep him at a wing, which I personally don't agree with. I think that I thought that Vincent Trocheck would be better suited as playing the wing. He's done it from time to time in Carolina.
I feel like he has a more complementary skills.
Exactly. And, I think it's one of those things where you could still stack your top six with him playing right wing, but, you don't really have to resort to having Kotkaniemi as a winger, and you don't have to break up Svechnikov and Aho.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think, just something I want to open the floor up for discussion. If they truly wanted to get revenge, now obviously there's no guarantee that Montreal would have not had the cap space to cover everything. Why not just wait and try and offer sheet Nick Suzuki next summer? I mean, his brother Ryan's already in the Carolina system, and those two could have been a big part of your future, and that would have been truly screwing the Canadians over and getting actual revenge on the Aho offer sheet.
Who's to say they're not going to go after Suzuki next offseason?
That's true. And who's to say Montreal may not potentially go after Marty Nietzsche's?
Yeah, exactly. Now you have bidding wars. I'm surprised nobody's made an offer sheet for Elias Pettersson yet.
I was going to say either.
Because that's the kind of dude I would go over 10 million for easy. Because talent like his does not come around that often.
No, exactly. He's one of those players that if you can offer him a 10 or $11 million offer sheet, knowing the Vancouver,
you give up maybe a first, a second, and a third. I think it's how it is. Yeah, dude, I take that easily. I don't care about the pick because that pick is already Elias Pettersson, and I signed him to a 10-year, $8 million or 7-year, $10 million plus deal. Here, take the money.
Plus, you got to
do that right now.
If you were making a trade for Elias Pettersson, you're trading 2 first-round picks at the minimum
plus prospects.
Exactly. So
if Seattle's trading, you're trading 2, maybe 3 first-round picks, Matthew Beniers, and maybe a couple younger defensemen, maybe a couple young forwards, if they have any. So that's who you're trading.
Exactly. It's a shame the Rangers don't have the cap space to pull that off, because I think that would just be an absolute slam dunk.
I feel like they're going to gun for Eichel either way. They're waiting for the value to drop because Buffalo's trying to shoot themselves in the foot. Because they think, we're not going to pay for surgery, but if Jack Eichel's not healthy, that value's just slowly tanking. It's draining. And they think they're going to get the elite value. It's like, dude, you're just playing hardball. And unfortunately, when one team blinks first, it's usually Buffalo, as we've seen with Ryan O'Reilly, as we've seen with Evander Kane, as we've seen with Robin Lehner, as we've seen with even Sam Reinhart.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just inevitable, really.
Yeah, the Sam Reinhart return was awful. That is very true. But
they did get a good return for Ristolainen.
They really cashed out on Ristolainen. But
which is surprising because he hasn't done anything yet. He's a name, but it's just like, okay.
He's literally
he has potential, but yeah.
He's like a right-handed Jack Johnson.
That's an insulting comparison. Oh.
I know, but it's true. I mean, similar career arcs,
Yeah.
But I think they'll go big for Eichel.
I agree. Him, Vegas, Anaheim, maybe Calgary. Mostly depends.
Anaheim would be very interesting.
Yeah, but Anaheim hasn't done anything. They've been too silent.
That's true.
So they have the prospects to pull it off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I think they have the prospects to pull it off without giving up someone like Zegers or Drysdale.
Oh, not at all. You can trade maybe Sam Steele, Troy Terry, Maxime Comtois. You could probably do Josh Mahura.
Exactly. Plus,
you can trade guys like that.
There's a lot more mid-level forwards in that system as well. That
Max Jones.
Max Jones is a big one. But let's move on here and talk about the NHL going back to the Olympics. This is something that has my interest very piqued because for the first time in a very long time, the Americans have a lot of potential to make a big, deep run. You got to think, at least right now, let's say if Eichel is okay and he's able to get the surgery and be ready to go for the Olympics, your three centers are going to be, your big three are going to be Matthews, Eichel, and Dylan Larkin. You make that your three center set and fill it out with wingers like, Patrick Kane will be back. You'll have Alex DeBrincat. You'll have the Tkachuk brothers. You'll most likely have Jake Gensel. You're really cooking with fire at this
American
point.
talent has really come a long way, especially in the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
With the West Coast, with the South.
Yeah.
You have huge hotbeds.
Exactly.
And now they have guys that can really just make a huge impact, especially even American goaltending like John Gibson. Hellebuck, I think, is American, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
So there you go.
And then your third goalie is a coin flip between Thatcher Demko and Spencer Knight.
Yeah, mostly depends how they do.
Exactly. It depends where they're at at that moment in time. But really, if you think about it on paper, you could say the Americans have the edge over Canada in goaltending.
Yeah, but Canada still has that loaded forward core and the defensive core. So it's a two-way race.
Yeah, definitely.
But it mostly depends if one of the Euro teams like Sweden plays spoiler, or if
Finland
one of the teams swings. Oh yeah, and Sweden's going to be good. Finland is goalie is an issue with Finland, but same thing. They're getting a little better. What I'm interested in are some of the Central European teams. Switzerland seems like they're up and coming. Denmark's kind of coming up there. Germany with Leon Draisaitl and a few other guys, they're coming up as well.
Exactly.
I miss when it was the 90s when Czechoslovakia was a big thing, but now they're two declining nations. They still put up some decent players, but it's not the level of what it was. And Russia, Russia's always a thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Russia's going to be loaded as always. They'll pull out of the KHL a little bit too.
Oh, but yeah.
You brought up an interesting point about Germany because you're going to have Leon Draisaitl, Tim Stützle. They have potential. They have
talent.
Yeah, they have potential to do something surprising and spoil a team. And even Latvia. Look at how Latvia was in the 2014 Olympics with Chris.
Latvia is another up-and-coming nation too.
100%. But Team USA, man, I'm very excited to see how they do it. They have a really good leadership core.
Excuse me. Sorry.
Bless you. You good?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. Sneezes.
Yeah. It happens, man. It happens. Yeah. But they have a good leadership group for the first time in a very long time. I trust Bill Guerin to not fall into that trap of just trying to get gritty grind guys.
That was a mistake in the World Cup of Hockey with Tortorella. They, Justin Abdelkader over Phil Kessel. It's no wonder why you flopped out.
Yeah. The only guy on their staff that is potentially suspect would be David Quinn, and he's going to be in such a limited
He's an
capacity.
assistant.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter.
The problem with Quinn was his vision didn't translate to the game. He has a lot of knowledge.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just it just didn't convert. It happens.
Yeah, his tenure in New York reminded me a lot of Mike Sullivan's first tenure in the NHL with Boston. You could tell it was there. He just couldn't bring it all together.
That does make sense.
Yeah.
Since obviously Sullivan's the coach and everything. We've seen like in past Olympics where Bosma would string a couple Penguins along. Like I remember the year he coached, he had Brooks Orpik and Paul Martin come along.
Yeah.
Olympics, even though they really probably didn't have any business being there. Nonetheless, could we potentially see a Brian Dumoulin sighting in 2022?
Maybe. It depends on who's really on the defensive side of the ring for the NHL. Like Cale Makar, is he American or is he Canadian? Canadian. All right. So you're looking at probably Seth Jones, even though he's had a really down year. He's probably one of your top defensemen. You're probably looking at, I'm trying to go through like all the.
John Carlson will be one.
John Carlson. Yeah, John Carlson. Werenski. I was going to say Ryan Ellis, but it's like, maybe.
Adam Fox.
Fox, yes. Fox.
Yeah. Also Jacob Slavin.
Jacob Sullivan.
Yeah, he'll be a big one. And I think, Dumoulin may have a shot at making Team USA simply because somebody has to play with Adam Fox and someone has to be capable of like doing that. And I feel like playing with Letang and playing with Adam Fox is pretty much one and the same.
I don't know. I feel like Fox is a little more reliable on his defensive end. Yeah. But I mean, playing with Letang will help you keep your heads up because with that game-breaking ability, he always makes like 2 or 3 plays that you're sitting there like, what the hell was that?
Exactly. 100%. You hit the nail on the head. But, another big one that is going to be an interesting storyline is Jacob Chikrin has dual citizenship for the United States and Canada.
So we're having a Brett Hull situation.
We might. If he doesn't make Team Canada out of camp, which with the way they're
which is surprising. I think Chitrin would make it considering how well he's played.
Yeah, you would think so, but you also got to think like old habits are going to die hard. Like Drew Doughty's going to be on that team, even though he probably doesn't deserve to be there. No. They're going to have a bunch of other random guys on that defensive set, and like Aaron Ekblad will be there. Other guys, other guys like that. Shea Theodore will probably be your number 1 or number 2 D.
Yep.
Because he's really come on in the past like several years. But if there's an outside shot that Jacob Chikrin does not make Team Canada, I wonder if he'll come over and play for the United States.
I'd say so.
I would love to see that.
He would be a huge asset for that defensive core.
I mean, one could argue like he would be your like most reliable
minimum second pairing. Second pairing.
Exactly. Like it would be a coin flip between him and Slavin for who I would have as the first left defenseman on that top pair. Because in my head, the way I have it dreamt up is like Slavin would play with Adam Fox, and then Werenski and probably John Carlson, and then you'd have Quinn Hughes and Charlie McAvoy. Seth Jones would be an extra.
The question is, you got to worry about Quinn Hughes in his defensive zone, so you may need a defensively responsible guy more than McAvoy. And McAvoy is very talented, but Quinn Hughes looked really rough in his own zone last year.
That's true. And McAvoy likes taking the puck up in his own zone himself.
Yep. So you're looking at a potential disaster unless you're just plopping him on a defensively responsible fourth line.
Yeah, and part of me wonders like if you could play like the right side, Quinn Hughes, and play with like maybe a Slavin or a Chikrin.
I mean, that may be the only way you go, but it's still way too early. So it's maybe somebody emerges out of nowhere. Maybe Quinn Hughes doesn't make the team, but we'll see.
Exactly. Now, Penguins related question. What do you think the odds are that Mike Sullivan finds a way to drag Brian Rust into this?
Rust wouldn't be bad as a fourth line energy guy.
Exactly.
So you know what? That's not a bad idea. He's in his prime. He offers skill. He has a decent finish. You put him with a good center. That's actually not a bad idea. Yeah, so I wouldn't mind having him tag along as like, a fourth line or an extra guy.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
He offers skills that you can't really replicate.
Yeah. Like he plays like a fourth line grinder, but can still shoot the living daylights.
Exactly.
That's so rare. If you put him with let's say maybe Brady Tkachuk on the fourth line left wing spot, and then your fourth line center is between JT Miller or Brock Nelson.
I would go
Something
Brock
like that.
Nelson. That is a line that will mess some people up. That is a
Exactly.
line that's going to rip people's hair out, especially with how the Islanders play. That two-way style, well in all three zones. That's that line, and that's the line that can eat up just puck possession, analytically inclined goodness. That's what that fourth line is.
Yeah, and it's very rare that the Americans are in this spot where they can create a fourth line like this without dragging along someone like Luke Glendening or something like they did in the World Cup of hockey.
Jeez, Luke Glendening. Oh
God. The whole, honestly, like in our lifetime, we've been just like tortured as like American hockey fans when it comes to like how these teams shake out and get picked. It's just been horrible.
Justin Abdelkader over Phil Kessel. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Doug, I want to throw this out to all you guys as well, not just Doug. I'm looking at other teams, that you could play a big factor in the Olympics. Obviously, we know, the USA, we've been talking about them. Canada always says, always is a big player in this. I'm looking at, I wouldn't necessarily an underdog, but another team that could play a big part is Team Finland. We have a lot of talent in the NHL right now from Finland.
Young talent too.
Just to name a few, Mika Rantanen, Sebastian Aho.
Yep.
You got Patrick Laine, Mikael Granlund, Tara Vinen, Kotkaniemi. We've been talking about him. You have a bunch of people, Kasperi Kapanen. There's a bunch of people here for Finland. That could be a huge team coming into this too that people might forget about.
My question there though is defensively, goaltending.
Yeah.
Defensively, you're looking at maybe Henry Jokiharju, and he's been like, kind of there. Goaltending, I can't really think of anybody off the bat that's like really good out of Finland. Sweden has done a great job developing goaltenders, so they won't have a problem.
There was
Finland.
There was a decent one, but he retired. Pekka Rinne already retired.
Pekka Rinne. That's your one. Saros, unfortunately, I think he's not Finnish.
Right.
So.
Yeah, no. The only one that I can think of that's like an NHL caliber goalie, and I might
Mikko Koskinen. That's the only one I can think of.
Yeah, or Capo Kakinen from the Wild.
Yeah, I mean they're okay, but that's not like I would consider an elite goaltender.
Yeah, it's not somebody that you would want to have running your like country's odds at medaling at the Olympics. But
other teams I'm looking at, I would say Sweden, Russia. Maybe Germany as well, because Germany does have Philip Grubauer.
That's true. Yeah, that's a big one. And then Sweden, like you said, with their goaltending situation, they're loaded.
They have excellent goaltending. They've done a tremendous job improving their goaltending. The 90s, it was barren. Like it was bad. But starting with King Henrik in the 2000s, they become a factory, especially with goaltending.
Exactly. And you're rolling into this with Robin Lehner and probably Linus Ullmark, right?
Maybe someone else too. Like there are a couple other names that you can probably throw out there as well.
Yeah, 100%. Scotty, what did you want to say?
I was referring back to Finland. Did we, in terms of their goaltending, did we name Korpisalo or did I miss that?
No, he did not name Korpisalo. But then again, once again, he's decent. He had a down year, but at the same time, you're rolling with those three. Would you take them over like a John Gibson or Andre Vasilevsky or anything like that? Unfortunately, no. Not right now.
Tuukka Rask is Finnish.
Oh, but Tuukka Rask is going to be injured, though.
That's true.
So,
that's true.
If he were healthy, maybe. But unfortunately, I don't know how long he's going to be out for. He's out for at least half the year.
UC Saros is Finnish, by the way.
He is Finnish.
So that's up there, and then you also have Antti Ranta. I know.
Ranta's another one if he's healthy too. So
yeah, exactly. But
too many question marks. That's the only thing. So Saros is probably the guy you picked. Why didn't I think Saros was Finnish? I thought he was Swedish.
I thought he was Swedish too. Maybe it's because of the colors of the Nashville jerseys.
Yeah.
Might be tripping.
Pekka Rinne is the only Finnish goaltender we have in Nashville.
Yeah, man. So before we go, you have any crazy predictions for the Penguins season? Like,
Ooh.
do you think they actually miss the playoffs?
I have to look it over because Carolina definitely makes it. Philly's weird because whenever you think they're good, they're going to suck. And whenever you think they're suck, they're going to randomly make the playoffs.
Exactly.
It's going to be between Pittsburgh and Washington. They're both on the same trajectory. Like, you know, former teams of glory, their cores are getting stale, they're aging, they're declining, they're kind of lost on where to head, and they've locked up a lot of their core long term. So it'll probably come earlier for Pittsburgh than Washington. Washington may have like a San Jose era where they just like are locked into these really bad contracts that they're forced to eat and then suck for 3 more years instead of properly rebuild. But Islanders probably make it too.
Yeah, and then
unless
the Rangers
like everything
might.
falls apart. Rangers, once again, mostly depends how the grid does. Like, but I feel like they overcompensated a lot. That's going to hurt them in the future.
Exactly.
So I mean, the East looks loaded. I don't think the Pens make it. I think they're one of the first teams out. It's very tough right now. I'll have to look into it a little further, but I mean, Columbus, I don't think they make it. New Jersey, they're still building. They'll need another year.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't think they finish below those teams. But it's going to be between Pittsburgh, Washington, Philly, and the Rangers. It's going to be those 4, and they're pretty interchangeable, I feel like.
Yeah, it's all I'm going to say is it's absolutely horrifying knowing that we're finally here.
I thought this was going to come earlier. I'm going to be completely honest with you. Because, like, come early 2016, they looked lifeless and boring under Mike Johnston. I'm like, this thing is fucked in 3 years. And now, well, we got a couple extra cups out of it. But now, unfortunately, there's a time where the Piper is ready to collect his due. And that time may be now.
Exactly.
It sucks, but you know what? I'll take my cups to the bottom of the ocean.
Dude, yeah, exactly. That's all you can do, you know? All right, guys, anything else that you have for Tree?
One last thing I want to touch upon, because this quote came out like last night or yesterday, I guess, from Pierre Dorian talking about the Ottawa Senators. Simply put, all he said was the rebuild is done.
That is interesting.
Ottawa playoff team this year.
Not with how tight that Atlantic is. I think they're on the right track, but they're not ready just yet. They need another year or two for everything to fully develop. And also remember, last year's free agent signings for Ottawa blew up spectacularly in their face.
Yeah, I mean, I love the run that Ottawa went on near the end of last year, but I don't see them like as a middle of the pack team.
Not with Tampa Bay, not with Toronto, not with Boston, not with Florida. I mean, you can make the argument that even Montreal might be better than them. Like, the only team I have confidence of them being over is Buffalo. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
Everyone else, it's like it's a coin flip. It's too tough. So I don't think the rebuild's over just yet. You need another year or two.
The bottom 6 is very weak for that team.
It is, but that needs to be fleshed out with time. So when you're lingering towards the salary like floor, you're not going to have fleshed out depth. You got to pay for that, or you got to build it from within. And with a bare bones scouting staff that Ottawa has, it's going to be very tough to find.
That's true. Yeah. And, just want to make a comment. Ottawa having one more bottom out year might be massive for them because, like you said, it's a deep draft. They'll probably get another top 10, potentially a top 5 pick.
If they win the lottery, they get Shane Wright. There's your franchise center.
And if you get number 2, you get Brad Lambert, who might not be as good as Shane Wright, but is still going to be a really, really high end center. So
throw him on the wing too.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, you could. Similar to like what they're doing with Stützle right now. That makes a lot of sense. But Tree, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it, man.
Thanks for having me on, boys. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome, guys. All righty. So this has been another episode of Forechecking TV. Follow us on Twitter at Forechecking TV, and be sure to look for us wherever you get your podcast from. Tree, before we go, is there anything else that you got coming up big on your channel?
No, I actually just released Haters Guide to the NFL, AFC, and NFC. I just finished those up. Sports ball for the NFL starts next week. Haters Guide to the NHL, probably early October.
Okay.
Because that's about the time I usually do it around training camp.
Yeah.
And then next couple ones are just going to be a few random vids. One briefly on UConn football, and the other vlog when I went to Daytona a few weeks ago.
There you go. Now, are we going to get a Haters Guide to the Olympics?
Maybe, because that's around the time the All-Star edition comes out too. That wouldn't be a bad idea, especially with the NHL talent that's going to be out there.
Yeah, I think it would make for
definitely
great
have to consider
content.
it.
Awesome. Alrighty, guys. Thank you. Good night. And, be sure to subscribe to Tree on YouTube, UrinatingTree, and follow him on Twitter @UrinatingTree. All right, guys. Thank you.